Masechet Baba Kama Daf Yod Zayin. We complete the first perek and we will begin the second perek. So last Mishnah says, Ma ben tam lemoad. What is the difference between a short tam and a short moad? We know already from the previous Mishnayot that short tam the owner pays a half, and for moad pays an entire amount. So we're not talking about that. Rather, a different aspect of the difference between tam and moad. Ela shatam mishalem chasi nezik mi gufo umoad mishalem nezek shalem min ha'aliyah. Besides the amount of that of payment that is different, also there is the way that it's paid is also different. For a short tam, the one that does the damage pays only up to a limit of the value of the ox that gores. If the ox that gores is worth 100, then he pays a maximum of 100, even if the half damage is more than 100. So there is a limitation. Even on the half payment, there is a limitation, whereas the owner of a shor mo'ad has to pay the full amount of all the damage, and he has to pay from his best property. So it's not limited to the animal that gores. He has to take out of pocket from his property and the best in order to make sure that payment is fulfilled in the most comprehensive way. The Gemara asks, "My aliyah, what does this mean that he pays from the best?" He has to pay with the superior quality property that he has. And we see another place where it says aliyah ma'aleh. This is when Chizkiah, the king, the righteous king, died. And he lies with his ancestors, and they buried him in Ma'aleh. I don't know, you could maybe imagine that it means in a high place, on top of a mountain or a hill or something. No, it means that he was buried in the best place of together with his ancestors David. He's from the Davidic lineage. What makes a certain burial plot the best? That it will be together with the greatest in the family, and that refers to King David and King Shlomo. And so he was buried in the family dynasty plot together with the other great kings of Judea. ויקברוהו בקבורותיו אשר קרא לו בעיר דוד וישכיבוהו במשכב אשר מילא בסמים וזנים. מהי בסמים וזנים? That we talked about one king who got a proper burial. So now we talk about King Asa, another king of Judea, and his burial, where he was buried in his own burial place that he had hewn out in the city of David. He prepared his own burial spot in an honored place, and he was laid to rest there with perfumes and spices. This is Asa. So what does that mean, perfume and spices? Machloket between two Amoraim. Rabbi Elazar amar zine zine. Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachmani amar besamim shekol hamariach behem balide zima. Rabbi Elazar interprets it to mean many different types of perfumes, many types of spices were buried with him, and this would be considered an honor to do for him. Even until today, in the Spanish-Portuguese tradition, if a chazan or dignified leader of the community dies, they have a custom to put a myrtle branch that smells nice together with the body. So Rabbi Shemuel, however, says this is referring to not only the number of different types of perfumes, but rather the power of the perfume. We put perfume that's so strong and seductive that anyone who smells it will lead them to licentiousness. Not that we're looking for that, but the point is that this is such a beautiful and compelling smell is worthy to put for such an honored and great king. And now we saw one machloket between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachmani regarding an interpretation of a pasuk, and so we move to another machloket between the same two sages about yet another pasuk, and this one is from Yirmiyah. who complains and says, they have dug a pit to trap me and have set snares for my feet. Yirmiyahu's messages were not always so popular among the people. He said, make peace with the Babylonians, and they saw that as being treacherous. And so some of his enemies dug a pit, literally, and threw him into the pit and put snares for his feet. But we're going to read it allegorically as well. Rabbi Elazar amar shechashaduhu mizona. Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani amar shechashaduhu me'eshet ish. Not only did they throw him into a pit, but they entrapped him with false accusations. Rabbi Elazar said that they suspected him of being with a zona. And Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani said that they spread rumors and suspicions that he committed adultery and he slept with a married woman. Obviously not true, but this would be to undermine his authority and his righteousness. Now we're trying to figure out where they get this from the pasuk when it says shucha, which literally means a pit. How does that mean either one of these interpretations? So we understand, according to one that says zona, we have a pasuk in Mishleh that says a zona is a deep pit. It's a trap, right? You think it's, this will be fun, this will be a good thing to do. No, it's a trap. It's only going to lead to terrible things. So we understand why zona would be why the word shucha would be interpreted as zona. Ela lamanda ma shechashaduhu me'eshet ish, mai shucha, to eshet ish minafka mikelal zona, but according to the one who says eshet ish, Rabbi Shemuel's opinion, how does what's the connection? Where do you see a pasuk that connects shucha, meaning a pit, to adultery? And the answer is, wait, an adulteress is also a zona, right? It's even worse. In fact, the punishment for adultery is much worse than that for a zonah, but it's included. It's one type of zonah. Someone who is zonah doesn't literally mean someone who is a prostitute that gets paid for her service. Anyone who acts in an improper way, engages improper, illegal relations, including an adulteress, is also included in zonah. So it's just a more specific example. Now a question the other way around. According to the opinion that they suspected Yirmiyahu eshet ish, and then we understand the pasuk hanu dichtiv ata Hashem yadat et kol asatam alai lamavet. Yirmiyahu further complains, says, Hashem, you know that their plans, my enemies' plans, are to kill me. So if they're accusing him of eshet ish, well, the punishment of eshet ish is in fact the death penalty, and so they're trying to convict him falsely and kill him. But if he's only that he was with a zonah, it's not a good thing to do, but there's no capital punishment. So what does he mean that they tried to kill me? And the answer is, well, they actually also threw him into a pit full of mire where he would have drowned if not that he was saved at the last moment by some friends. Darash Rava, my dichtiv yu muchshalim lefanecha be'ayat apecha aseh bahem. And so now we go to yet another pasuk in Yirmiyah, and to interpret that, and this time Rava is explaining this pasuk, says, let them be made a stumbling block before you, deal with them in the time of your anger. Yirmiyah prays that his enemies should be punished by Hashem. What does this mean? Amadi me'alfnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, afilu בשעה שעושים צדקה, הכשילם מבני אדם שאינן מהוגנים, כדי שלא יקבלו שכר עליהן. Yirmiyahu was saying, even when they try to do something good, in other words, when they are in front of you, right, lifanecha, even when they come, these enemies, and they try to do a good act, like give charity, make them stumble. That's the mukshalim, let them stumble, even when they are coming before you, to like as if they're doing something good, by making sure that their charity goes to unworthy people so that they don't get any reward. In general, we give charity. We hope that it gets to people that are worthy and it doesn't get into wrong hands and get embezzled or corrupt or go to evil people. So it's important to make sure that our charity is really going to the right place. It's part of our responsibility in overseeing, organizations that give it out and see where it goes. As long as one tries, and so, you still receive a benefit you see from other sources that you still get credit for giving tzedakah, even if, sometimes it doesn't end up getting to the right place, but you still get benefit. But if you know that is going to the wrong place, then certainly you don't get benefit. And so that's Yirmiyahu's prayer here, right? May it be that even when my enemies do something good, so-called good, and give charity, I hope it will go to bad people and they won't get any credit at all, because really they don't deserve it. And now we're going back to Chizkiah, which we started with. We went on a couple of tangents. King Chizkiah, they did great honor for him in his death. What did they do? They established the yeshiva at his grave and studied Torah in his honor. Right? What greater honor can there be for that? Right? What do you want? A lot of flowers, a procession? What better thing than studying Torah, as many people do today? We'll study Mishnah or other Torah in memory of someone. Peligi ba Rabbi Natan v'Rabbanan Hadamar Shelosha v'Hadamar Shiva v'Amri la Sheloshim. Machloket, how long did they set up a special session to learn Torah in his memory? So one opinion says 3 days, another 7 days, another said 30 days. Tenor, we do arayat now. We do kiriyah of Tehillim, right, or other learning of Torah, and we in fact do that after 7 days and after 30 days. So you see, this is a good source for that. Tenor Rabbanan v'chabod asu lo bemoto zechizkiah melech Yehuda she'asu lefanav 36,000 chalusei chatef divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Or another opinion of Baraita says asu lo gematria is 36, which means that they had 36, not just 36, but 36,000 men with bared shoulders. One of the mourning customs back then was to not only tear one's clothes, but tear it so much that the shoulder is bared, a sign of being depressed, sorrowful, feeling totally dejected, apart from society, exposed, raw, humiliated. So all those feelings are reflected in this practice. So although today we only just bear a little bit by tearing clothes, this was an ancient thing to bear one's shoulder. And for Chizkiah, since he was such a great king, 36,000 people went around like that during the period of mourning. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Nechemiah said, no, that can't be the great honor that they did for him, because even for Achav, the evil king, they did the same thing. It doesn't say so in Pesukim, but this is based on his own midrash, and so that can't be the great thing that they did. The great honor that they did is they took a Torah scroll, put it on his coffin, and they said, this one, meaning Chizkiah was buried here, fulfilled this one, meaning the Torah that we put upon him. And so that was, what a great honor. What is a greater eulogy than that, to say that this person fulfilled the whole Torah. Now we ask, but we do this also today. A Torah scholar, apparently, is very interesting. We learn some of the funeral practice, they did that. So we do that today also. So that's not, we do it for our own here scholars. And so is that what's so great about doing it for Chizkiah? And the answer is, nowadays, yes, we do take out a Sefer Torah to show this person fulfilled the Torah, but we don't actually put it on the coffin nowadays, but they did that for Chizkiah, so that was the greater honor. Or some say we do in fact even will put the Torah scroll onto the coffin nowadays, but we won't say this formula that he fulfilled everything that is written in that. That's an extra honor that they did for Chizkiah, which we don't usually do for others. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, v'hava azilna behaded Rabbi Yochanan mishal shema'ata, ki hava ayel bet hakiseh, v'hava be'ayna mineh mileta, la pashitlan ad demashe yadeh u'manach tefilin, u'mevarech v'hadad amad lan, afilu kiyem lo amrinan, limed lo amrinan. So Rabbi Chana says, I was walking on the way with Rabbi Yochanan, and I wanted to ask him about this very derasha. And when he would go into the bathroom, I was asking him on the way, and he went into the bathroom, and I wanted to ask him, but he would not answer me until he first finished by going to the bathroom, washed his hands, put back on his tefillin. They used to wear tefillin all day, but they would take them off when he went to the bathroom. And then he would make a blessing, and only then he would answer us. And there's what he said. So we learned something by the way here, right? That the proper order to do things when one goes to the bathroom and then comes out, you shouldn't speak Torah or converse in the bathroom at all, or speak Torah until, right, you wash hands and say the beracha, put on tefillin, all that. And then he told us, even kiyem amrinan, afilu kiyem amrinan, limed lo amrinan. Nowadays, we actually do say kiyem. If a Torah scholar dies, we'll put a Torah on his coffin and we'll say he fulfilled everything that's in the Torah. But what we don't say is limed, that he taught everything in the Torah, and that's the extra honor they did for King Chizkiah, is they even said that he taught everything in the Torah. Now we question that. Wait a second, the master said that learning Torah is great because it leads to doing. That means doing is better than learning. So therefore, saying that one fulfilled kiyem is actually a higher level than limed. And so how is that a greater honor for Chizkiah? It sounds like a lower level, that, he only learned, but he did not saying fulfilled. So because fulfilled is greater, since the tradition is that learning is only better because it leads to doing, so therefore doing is better. And the answer is la kashya ha lemigmad ha leagmure. No, if it's talking about learning oneself, then doing is better than learning for oneself. You learn on your own; it's necessary so that you can do. But in terms of teaching, that's the highest of all. Teaching others is higher than doing, which is higher than learning for oneself. Because if you're teaching others, then you're giving them the tools and ability and inspiration to themselves practice and do all mitzvot. And so that's what Chizkiah did. He was known to teach Torah throughout the entire nation. And so for most people, we say this person fulfilled. Chizkiah, they said he taught everything that's in the Torah. אמר רבי יוחנן משום רבי שמעון בן יוחאי, מה דכתיב אשריכם זורעי כל על כל מים משלחי רגל השור והחמור. A pasuk in Yeshaya that we quoted all the way back at the beginning of the Masechet. What does this mean in Yeshua when it says at the end of days everything's going to be good and you're going to be so happy and blessed? You that sow beside all water, if you sow seeds next to water, then surely they will flourish and you'll have so much grain and grass that you'll send the feet of the ox and the donkey to go and eat. You'll have so many, you'll be so plentiful, you have so much vegetation and so many animals, and that you'll be able to feed them with ease. Kol ha'osek b'torah g'milut chasadim zochel lenachalat sheteh shebatim. Rabbi Yochanan says we should understand this allegorically, that anyone who does these two things, learns Torah and engages in acts of righteousness. So both here we said, if you have to choose one or the other, which one's more important? But obviously, the best thing is to do both. Anyone who does both will get the inheritance, the reward of two tribes, the two tribes that are represented by an ox and a donkey. As we explained, Shneimar Ashrechem Zora'eh, when it says, happy are you, those who sow, Ven Ziri'ah Ela Sedaka, Shneimar Zir'u Lachem Listaka, Vekisru Lefi Chesed, Ve'mayim Ela Torah, Shneimar Hoi Kosameh Lechula Mayim. Ziri'ah, sowing, that refers to charity, as Pasuk in Yeshaya that says, sow for yourselves, for charity, reap according to kindness. The idea is when you give to charity and give to others, then has such great effect and it grows and even more good things in the world. Right? If you give charity, then you'll be able to reap kindness and mayim. That is, so you're growing that, right? You're doing this good gemilut chasadim alongside water, and water refers allegorically to Torah. So that's someone who does gemilut chasadim and also learns Torah. As the pasuk says, all those who are thirsty go to water, and that refers to Torah study. So if a person does both of those things, zochel lenachalat shebatim, zochel lechila ke Yosef. Tichti ben Porat Yosef banot sa'ada ale shur vezochel nachalat Yisachar dichtib Yisachar hamor garem. They will get the reward of the canopy of honor of Yosef. As it says, Yosef is like a fruitful vine by a fountain. Branches run over a wall. So I guess you imagine like an ivy, ivy going up a wall and making a beautiful canopy. And so Yosef will be as successful as that. And so someone that does both Torah and Gemurul Chasadim will have that success. And furthermore, we'll also have the success mentioned by Yisachar that says he's compared to a donkey. As it says, Yisachar is a large and strong donkey. So they're as strong as a donkey. The shor here, even though we translate as wall, is the same letters as shor. So that's how we get that Yosef is compared to a shor and Yisachar to a donkey, and therefore one gets all of this reward, which is good. Not that the person learns Torah and does Gemut Chasadim in order to get such reward, but rather that if one has economic and physical success, then one will be able to learn Torah more productively and do more Gemilot Chasadim and give more tzedakah. So these enable someone to continue doing all the great things that they do. דכתיב בהם עמים ינגח יחדיו אפסי ארץ וזוכה לבינה כי יששכר דכתיב ובני יששכר יודעי בינה לעיתים לדעת מה יעשה ישראל. Or another interpretation, someone who learns Torah and does Gemul Chasadim will get reward like Yosef and Yisachar in a different way, that a person's enemies will fall before him just like that of Yosef, quoting the blessing in Vezot HaBeracha that says Yosef's horns are like that of a wild ox, and using them he will gore the nations even to the ends of the earth. So that's the military success and might and protection and defense. And also that person will merit to have understanding, like Yisachar. Regarding Yisachar, it says in Divrei Yamim, and the children of Yisachar, men of understanding of the times, and to know what Israel ought to do. So they get both physical, military success, as well as success in their study. I think it is fascinating that we have this Agadah at the end, and it quotes the very same Pesukim that we have at the beginning of it. So we have a kind of envelope structure around the entire chapter. And so while in the middle there's a lot of very technical details about exactly how much damage you have to pay in this case, and where it is, and what kind it is, and the categories, because you have to judge precisely what a person owes. But this is embedded in an envelope structure referring to these blessings and Agadot about and Pesukim about the end of times. And so what is the structure telling us? What's the idea? So if we look as an overview, I'm quoted here just the very beginning and the end, and the same Pesukim that are quoted. So up at the top it said Keden. What's the derivation for goring? And really you don't. There's clearer Pesukim, and instead it brings these Pesukim from Melachim that Sidkiah, the false prophet, says using these horns you'll be able to go and conquer your enemies. And then it says the blessing to Yosef. The full pasuk of the blessing is here, right? The first bull in majesty, the horns like that of wild ox, with them he gores peoples to the ends of the earth. And this is Ephraim, and this is Menashe. The idea here is that so while horns and these kinds of dangerous things and weapons, while they can be used for damages, which is negative, but they can also be used for defense of the nation, and thereby be part of such an important blessing to bring security to the entire nation. And so quoting the flip side, the negative side of damages, but also the positive side of Keren, that it can bring redemption and protection. And so that's at the beginning of the Perek, and at the end of the Perek also makes reference to it again, that person's enemies will fall before him if he does righteousness. In other words, does not make sure not to engage in damaging others, and causing the destruction and doing evil things. But rather, if one does Gemilut Chasadim, the opposite, and learns Torah, like learns this Perek, and then understands, right, the sensitivities of making sure not to cause damage and harm people, right, then one will have merit that instead of having his oxen gore others negatively and cause damage and cause him to pay, instead, his oxes, his animals, and his horns will be used for his own protection. So it's the flip side, the positive side of such things. And similarly, in the beginning, when it says Shen and Regel, how do we know that? What's the source for Regel? And it says one pasuk is Vishilach, which is a clear-cut pasuk that says, an animal goes and to someone else's field and causes damage. But then it quotes an unusual pasuk regarding someone who has plants besides water, and he sends forth his ox and his donkey. And this is referring to a time in the future of redemption when a person will not have to struggle and will be able to enjoy all the good and prosperity of the land of Israel. And so, of course, that pasuk, as well as a pasuk in Melachim regarding Shen as a punishment for Yerovam for the evil king. And so, it quotes here this pasuk in Yeshaya at the beginning, and then this pasuk in Yeshaya comes up again at the very end of our Masechet, although it's in an ABBA structure. Right, first it quotes here pasuk from about Yosef and Zot HaBaracha, and then Yeshaya, and at the end it quotes first Yeshaya and then the pasuk about Yosef. But the context of the pasuk in Yeshaya is how great are people who happy are people that learn Torah and do Gemilut Chasadim, and they with their oxen and donkeys won't have the problem of wandering off into other people's fields and causing damage, and people then fighting with each other and having to pay money and restitution and all the problems that come along with that. And so rather than that, instead, you'll have your own pasture, and everything that you need will grow. You'll have plenty of water, plenty of plants, plenty of animals to go and eat all of them, and you'll be happy. So in the merit of making sure that we learn Torah and do Gemilut Chasadim and treat others with kindness and righteousness and outgoing charity, we'll be saved from being caused damage and causing others damage, and we'll be able to receive all the blessings of the Torah, the blessings of Yosef, the blessings that Yeshaya talks about. So you see that this Agadah is really gives us the essence of what this Perek is all about, and the Gemara actually says it somewhat explicitly, quite explicitly, in Masechet Shabbat when it lists all the Sedarim of the Mishnah from the pasuk Vayamunat Eitecha Chosin Yeshuot Chochmat Vadat, and so each one of these words refers to another Seder, and it says Yeshuot in this pasuk. In Mishle, what does Yeshuot refer to? It is Seder Nizikin. Nizikin is connected to redemption. Well, what's the connection between Nizikin and redemption? Right? I might think, other things might be connected to redemption, maybe Korbanot, or I don't know what. Rashi says, Moshi'an, Mazir lefrosh mehezek umitchayab mamon. By making sure to stay away from damages and having to pay money, so that saves people, right? That's what Rashi explains, and that's true, of course. But I think there's a deeper meaning here that the laws of damages are the essence of being sensitive to the needs of others, and that is prevented by Gemilut Chasadim and the study of Torah. And the more one learns Seder Nezikin, the more one recognizes, right, what that damage really means. And there's all kinds of ways that one can cause damage by not returning something, or by hezek re'iyah, looking at someone in the wrong way, and all kinds of other things. And when one becomes sensitized to that, then what will prevent people from from damaging, and that will ultimately bring righteousness and therefore redemption. So in a very fundamental way, these Pisukim that is quoting at the beginning and at the end are not simply technical legal sources for how do you know Keren, how do you know Shen and Regel, but really are the ultimate derivation and goal of the laws that we studied in this perek. Hazran alach arba'a avot. That brings us to the beginning of the second perek, Kesad Haregel Mu'edet. This is following up immediately and with the end of the Mishnah in the first perek that talked about Regel being Mu'ad. And so, what is the case of Regel? L'shaber bederech hilucha. That means if an ox is walking the way it normally walks, and as it's walking, it smashes things with its legs. That is a normal way of it being of walking, and therefore is to be expected. And if this happens in the domain of the nizak, then the owner of the ox is fully liable. Mu'ad. Habehema mu'adet lehalech kedarka ul'shaber. And now we have another statement that seems to be a repetition, that an animal is considered forewarned when it comes to walking in its normal way and breaking things as it's walking. So the Gemara is going to ask, why do we need both of these sentences? It seems redundant. Hayta meva'etet o sheyusrot menatezin mitachat ragleha veshabera'et hakelim meshalem hasi nezek. If, however, the animal was not walking in a normal way but kicking, animal can, kind of get angry and be purposefully kicking and breaking things, or that it was walking in its normal way and then pebbles were propelled and flew out from under its legs and broke a vessel. In both of these cases, the owner only has to pay half a nezek. Why? Well, in this case, this is not the normal way of walking, and so therefore it doesn't fit into the normal category. If it's walking normally, you have to pay full amount. But if it's unusual way of walking, then only half. And the case of the pebbles, well, this is indirect. The animal did not break those, didn't touch the vessels. It just was walking in its normal way, and then independently or incidentally, indirectly, the pebble flew and broke a vessel, so there I am not fully responsible, which makes sense. It's also, we're going to see a halacha l'mshe, but it also is logical. Darsa al hakeli ushvaratu, v'nafal al hakeli ushvaro, al harishon meshalem nezek shalem, v'al hacharon meshalem hasi nezek. Now we can combine these cases together. If a animal is walking on the way and steps on a vessel and breaks it, and then that vessel falls on top of a second vessel and breaks it, kind of like dominoes. So it smashes the first one, but it doesn't touch the second one. But the first vessel, as it's being smashed, touches and breaks a second one. So for the first one, you have to pay full amount because that is a normal case of regel. As it's walking, it breaks something. And the second one is the same as a pebble. It's only broken indirectly, and therefore only has to pay a half. So even for the same one act, and the two vessels get broken, for the first one he pays a full amount, and the second one only half of the damage. Now all this applies not only to animals, but also chickens. They are forewarned regarding their normal way of walking. If a chicken is walking along, hopping along, as it normally does, and breaks something, the owner is fully liable. But if there's a string tied to it and it flies off and breaks something like the pebbles, or it was hopping and then by hopping it caused something to fly out and break a vessel indirectly, then he pays half a damage, right? So this is equivalent to the ox cases, but just applied to a chicken. All right, that's the Mishnah. Amar le Ravina l'Rava, Hainu regel, hainu behema. So Ravina asks about the first line. Why does it say, the regel is mu'ad, and then it says the behema is mu'ad? That's the same thing. You just gave the same exact cases of walking in its normal way. Amar le Tana avot v'katane toladot. And his answer is, no, the first line is talking about the avot Masikin, Regel, and then the second line is talking about subcategories, Toladot of it, and so that's why I repeated it twice to include both. Okay, Ela me'ata sefa dekatani Hashem mu'adet, abehema mu'adet, my avot my toladot ika. But this doesn't work because later on Daf Yutet, we're going to see the continuation of the Mishnah that says also regarding Shen, Kesada Shen Mu'adet Lechot Hara'uila. Shen is when it eats something that it normally eats. And Behema Mu'adet Lechol Perot Virakot. And then the same thing with Behema. So same structure as our Mishnah. And it says, to eat fruits and vegetables. But then it doesn't go on to talk about Toladot. And so there's no Toladot here. So we can't say the same thing, the same answer. Over here, for Regel, it says, okay, fine, it talks about avot and toladot, but over there's no toladot, my toladot ika, so you can't give that answer. What are you going to say? Hava kamehadele bebedichuta ve'amar le ana shenai hada ve'at shenei hada. So Ravina was the one that told Rava this chidush in the first place. Rava asked this question. Ravina answered with a joke and said, listen, I solved one Mishnah, you solved the other Mishnah. Okay, this is funny because, Rava is challenging Ravina's answer and saying, your answer doesn't work because it does not apply to the second one. But Ravina's like, well, I fit it with the first one, you fit it with the second one. Even though Rava's point was that, no, you're wrong about the first one also. Okay, so that is actually pretty funny. All right, V'tama mai. So, we do need an answer. So what is the answer? Amar Rav Asher, Tana shen de haya v'katani shen de behema. Sakada de chamina v'shilachet be'iroketi behema in hayala kamashmalan de chaya bichlal behema. Rav Asher explains that in the Mishnah over there, it says the first line is talking about that of a chaya, of a wild animal, and then that of a behema. So that's why it says behema here, mu'edet. So therefore, by process of elimination, we can say that the shen in the first line is talking about a wild animal that also, if it goes and eats in someone's field, then the owner of that wild animal will be liable. Now, I might have thought otherwise, since the pasuk itself in Sefer Shemot says he sends his animal be'iro, is referring to a domesticated animal. I might have thought that the laws of damages apply only to domesticated animals, but not to wild animals, and that's why the Mishnah here has to add an extra line to say shen, wild animals also. Wait, if that's so, then really you should have put the behema first, since you learned that from a pasuk. So you should say the main case, behema, we learn it from pasuk in Shemot, and then say, also shen, to refer to hayot. And the answer is, Hai da'atya le midrasha habiba le. Actually, the Tana of the Mishnah, he put the one that's derived from a derasha because it's more dear to him. The Pasuk says something explicitly, okay, we know, we kind of take it for granted. Everybody knows the Pasukim, but something that you learn from a derasha, look at the power of a derasha, that you can derive one thing from another. That's more beautiful, more beloved. I mean, anytime you have something just handed to you, you take it for granted. But if you have to work at it and create it and do something, right, then it's more beloved. And so here the rabbis had to derive it, and therefore it's quoted first. If that's true over there, then here also regarding regel, you should put the toladot first and then the avot. The idea being that the avot we take for granted. That's explicitly what it says in the Torah. And the toladot is what we derive. So since what you derive is more beloved, it should say the toladot first. Says, no, you can't compare them. There in the second Mishnah regarding Shen, all of them were examples of avot. It's an av for a chaya, an av for a behema, just which kind of animal is doing it. So there we want to put the derasha before the explicit pasuk. So we do that. But here, when we're talking about different categories, main categories and subcategories, it wouldn't make any logical sense to put a subcategory before a main category. And so here certainly, even though the main category is from the Torah and more beloved are derashot, but still we have to be logical and put the main category before the subcategory. That's one answer. Or another answer is at the very end of the previous Mishnah, we were talking about regel, and so we start off also here talking about the regel as the main category, and once we talk about the main category, then we could talk about the subcategories by adding the second line. Now that we mentioned the toladot of regel, here is a braita that's going to list a whole bunch of subcategories of regel. These are all things that one animal will damage, but in a normal course of walking, except that the damage is not done by his leg directly, but by a different part of his body. So when we say that this is the second line of the Mishnah, that an animal is mu'ad, is forewarned, if it's walking in its normal way and breaking, what would that be? Because we already said if it's smashing something, the first sentence already mentioned the main av, which was with its leg. So what's the second one, which is toladot? By the way, Shen also does have toladot, but the reason we can't ascribe that second Mishnah later to toladot is because it actually says in the second line there, if it eats fruits and vegetables, which is the normal way of eating. So the toladot are all other things that are not just eating fruits and vegetables. So that's why we had to give a different answer there regarding Deoraita and something learned from a Derasha. All right, so what are these toladot? First of all, it has to be still in the courtyard of the injured party for the owner to be liable. And whilst walking normally, it breaks something, with its body, right? With the weight of its body, it pushes something over, or smashes something, or even with its hair, something gets caught in its hair while it's walking normally and breaks. With its saddle, or saddlebag, the halter in its mouth knocks into something, or the bell that's on its neck bangs into something, or similarly with a donkey and its burden that it's holding is sticking out and breaks something. All these are the same as regel, and what this is a normal way for it to act, and therefore the owner has to pay full amount. Sumchos disagrees and says regarding pebbles that indirectly cause damage, or a pig that is burrowing, and it's a normal way to burrow in garbage pit, and it smashes something while it's doing that, they have to pay a full amount. Now, this is curious because Simchus doesn't seem to be talking about any case that was mentioned here. We ask, Hizik Peshita. Well, Simchus, why are you telling me that if a pig breaks something, he has to pay full amount? Isn't that obvious? Like, there's no argument here. Rather, the pig here is not that he breaks something directly. If he breaks something directly, then obviously he would be liable because he's acting in a normal way for pigs to act. So that would be fully liable. But rather, it's talking about if while he is burrowing in the garbage, he pushes something and it flies out and knocks over something else and breaks something else, then he has to pay a full amount. And so actually, so fine, we got that case. Now we ask further. Okay, still there's a lack of continuity between the Tanakama and Sumchus, because the Tanakama did not talk about pebbles. So why is Sumchus all of a sudden talking about pebbles? And now that we established this is a pig that indirectly causes one vessel to destroy another, we didn't talk about pebbles and indirect destruction. You're right, despite that we're missing some words, and here's what it's supposed to say. We're missing words. First, the Braita brought all the regular cases of an animal breaking something with its body. It doesn't have to be with its leg, with any part of its body or anything attached to it. That would be a normal way of breaking things, and one is fully liable. However, and this is the part that we're missing, if the animal is simply walking and pebbles are propelled and it breaks something, or similarly, if a pig is doing its normal thing in the garbage and something flies out because of what it's doing and causes damage, then chatzi nezek. That's the halacha that we saw earlier. Chatzi nezek, because this is an unusual thing, or rather in this case it's indirect, and therefore serorot chatzi nezek. Now we learn that's only the opinion of Tanakama, Rabbanan. Sumchus, however, says that even indirect damage with pebbles or with a pig that is playing around in the garbage and something flies out and causes damage, full payment. That's Sumchus's opinion. Full payment for Sedorot. Okay, good. Now we're going to see 3 baraitot that all say basically the same thing. Tenor Rabbanan, Tanigolin shayu mafrichin v'makom l'makom v'shabru kelim bechanfehen mishalem nezek shalem. Beruach shebechanfehem mishalemim chasi nezek. If you have chickens that are flying around, hopping and flying with their wings from place to place, and they break something with their wing knocks into something, well, even though it's not with its feet, it's the same thing as regel. That's its normal way of traveling, and it's direct, so he has to pay a full amount. But if by flapping its wings it makes wind, and the wind breaks something, that's the same as pebbles, and therefore only has to pay. It's indirect and only has to pay half. According to Sumachos, however, full amount even if it's indirect. Second, Tanya idach. תרנגולים שמהדסין על גבי עיסה ועל גבי פירות וטינפו נקראו משלם נזק שלם. העלו אפילו אוסרות משלמין חצי נזק. סומכוס אומר נזק שלם. If a chicken is hopping on dough or produce and they make it all bad, or they peck at it and it's damaged, you have to pay a full amount, because this is a normal activity of chickens. And so this will be the same as regel, even though it might be doing it with its beak and pecking around at it. Nevertheless, that's a tolada of regel. However, if they were just hopping around nearby and cause dust to come or pebbles, and they go and cause damage to something, that's indirect and therefore only chasi nezek. Sumchus again here says no, full nezek, because he thinks that even indirect damage, one is liable fully. Tanya idach, a third baraita. Tanagol sheyam mafriach b'makom l'makom v'yasta ruach mitachat kanafa v'shibera et hakelim b'shem chasi nezek sitama ke'rabanan. And the third baraita says a chicken's flying from place to place and wind indirectly causes something to break. You have to pay only half nezek. Here it doesn't say sumachus. But we see here is that the stam, these are all anonymous statements, and so the anonymous statements are the same as Rabbanan. That's why they're anonymous, to say that this is the majority opinion. Okay, good. So Amar Rava Bishlam Sumchus Kasabar Kocho Kigufo Dameh Ela Rabbanan I Kigufo Dameh Kule Nezek Ba'el Shalem I Lav Kigufo Dameh Hasi Nezek Dameh La Mishalem. Rava is asking about this, the logic here. I understand the logic of Sumchus. He thinks that a force generated by an animal is the same as the animal's body itself. So therefore it doesn't matter if the animal's body physically touches something and breaks it, or if it causes a pebble or wind and that indirectly breaks something, it's still from the force of your body, so it's the same. And that's why full nezek. Ela Rabbanan, iki gufo dameh kulo nezek ba'ed l'shalem. Ilav ki gufo dameh hasi nezek name la l'shalem. According to Rabbanan, if you consider the extended force of a person to be the same as their body, then you should pay the full amount. That's what Somachos says. And if you think it's not, that an indirect cause is not like a person's own body, then pay nothing. In other words, it should be all or nothing. How'd you come up with half? And so that was the question. Says really, it is like one's body, because otherwise, if it's just a random force, a random wind comes, it's not my problem. All right, things fly around all the time just from nature. So therefore, we have to say that the force that a person has in pushing a pebble or wind is an extension of their own body, and therefore really should be responsible. So really, Sumchos, from the letter of the law, from the basic logic, is correct. However, this is where we bring the halacha l'Moshe Sinai as needed to say, even so, we're going to be lenient on the person since it wasn't exactly his body that did it, but it's only indirect. So you know what? For indirect, you only have to pay half, and that's simply a tradition from the oral law. Lastly, Amar Rava, Kol shebezav tameh ben nizakin meshalem nezek shalem, v'chol shebezav tahor ben zakin meshalem chasi nezek. Rava, very interesting. Rava was the champion of conceptualization, and he very interestingly compares two very, very different halachot, and he says anything that a zav would make tameh through contact, regarding these damages, one would have to pay a full amount. But if any interaction between a zav and an item would not make it tameh, then if an animal does it, in cases of damages, would only have to pay half the amount. So a zav is a high level of tum'ah. A zav can impart tum'ah by touching something, but also by carrying it, even if he's not directly touching it. If he's carrying a tray or items, and there's something all the way on top, and he lifts it, and he's carrying it, even though he's not touching it, still becomes tameh. Similarly, if a zav sits on something, even if he sits on 10 mattresses all the way on top, and nevertheless the chair or the bed all the way on the bottom becomes tameh, just from its weight. And so you see here, in all the cases of a zav, it's something that is directly connected to the zav, even if it's not touching directly the item that becomes tameh. He is touching something that's touching something that's touching something that is imparting tum'ah. And therefore, that's the same for nizikin. If the animal or anything that is touching, like it's a saddlebag, or even if something is touching the saddle, is attached to the saddlebag, and if it's direct force contact between the animal and the broken item, then you have to pay a full amount. But if not, if it's just air in between, then we would only pay a half nezek, because if there's only air in between, there's no way a zav can make something tameh with just air. Unlike maybe like an ohel, that a dead body can make things in its airspace tameh. But not so for zav. So Rava notices an interesting correlation between these. Rava, so now we ask Rava, what are you telling us that's new? Right? Are you trying to teach us that pebbles is chatzi nezek? Right? We know that already. We just discussed it. And it says la Rava eglam moshechet bekaron kamash malan. No, Rava is teaching us a new law about an animal pulling a wagon. Let's say it's pulling a wagon, which is a normal thing to do, and it's not that the animal's foot smashes something, but the wheel of the wagon smashes something. So what do we call that? Is that direct and full nezek, or is that like a pebble indirect? And so the answer is, well, let's see. If it were a zav and the zav pulled something, that would make it tameh. And so therefore here also, if the cart runs over something or smashes into something, then the owner of the animal, it will be fully liable because it's directly connected. A zav would make it tameh, so the animal is considered connected, and he has to pay full. The owner has to pay full amount. Tanya kivated Rava, we have a braita that supports this chidush of Rava. Behema mu'edet leshaber bederech hilucha kesad. In what cases is an animal forewarned to break things in the normal way? Kesad, in the normal way of walking. Kesad, behema nisad l'chasad nizak, vezika begufa derech hilucha, ubisara derech hilucha beukaf shela beshalif she'aleha, befrumbia shebefir bezog shebesavara, v'chamor bemasa'o, ve'egla moshechet bekaron meshalem nezek shalem. So the cases we had before, it goes into the shuta nizak, and it causes damage the way it normally walks, and with its hair, or with its saddle or saddlebag, or the halter, or the bell, or the donkey with what it's carrying, or, and this is the new one, a calf that's pulling a cart. In all these cases, this is a direct part of its body, or something directly connected to its body, and therefore one has to pay the full amount. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.